And now, without further ado, I would like to welcome, I'm now moderating the next panel, so you just don't get rid of me, sorry. May I ask my fellow panelists to join me? It's His Serene Highness Prince Michael of Liechtenstein. It's Dr. Matthias Michel, who is Mrs. Speer's counterpart in Zurich. Then we have the CEO of Moderator and founder of Crypto Valley Ecosystems, Mr. Gevers. Are you here? Fantastic, brilliant, welcome. We have also Kairat Kelimbetov from Mr. Finance in Mr. Financial Services in Kazakhstan. We have Ms. Linda Zeilina from Redefine. And we have Mr. Avi Mizrahi from Israel. So please all take a seat. Thank you for joining us. This is the opening panel. It's supposed to sort of set the scene and look not just at the technological and business impacts of this new technology, but also at the societal impacts of this new technology. Which stands behind cryptocurrencies. It enables new ways of executing financial transactions, commodities trading, and many other applications. So without further ado, we have about 40 minutes. We have 6 speakers, so I have to be very, very strict with all of you on time, and I have these glasses when I put them on, time's up. I will ask each of you a quick question, for which you give me a 2 to 3 minute answer, and I'm starting with the gentleman to my right, Your Serene Highness. You hail from the Principality of Liechtenstein, which is very obvious, you have the name, which is where the second most important sector is finance, as you've informed me. What do you think are the opportunities and what are the dangers of blockchain and cryptocurrency, especially as they pertain to the stewardship of your principality?
Thank you, and good morning. I will try to do that very quickly. I think we have 3 aspects here which are important. The financial sector is very important for Liechtenstein as a modern financial center. The main theme of the financial center is actually wealth preservation. Whether it's the trustees industry, the banking industry, the asset manager, the funds and the insurances, is more of protection of private wealth. We do that because we see the importance of private wealth and property rights for the economy, so that actually private wealth is secured by property rights, but also the responsible use of private wealth in the economy. Now, blockchain is an ideal tool in order to take the transactions, to have the story of the transactions, and therefore also to record the values and the property of values. This is a key thing for our wealth preservation business. The second one is that we see the opportunity to develop, as also in Switzerland, a certain hub in the area of cryptocurrencies. And there is a lot of movement, a lot of activities. And also our regulators, the Liechtenstein Financial Service Authorities, they created something which they call a regulatory laboratory in order to regulate it, but not over-regulate it, trying to find an efficient way. I know over-regulation is a problem. It's a huge problem now in the financial industry, so it's hopefully can break it through. But there's another thing which also our hereditary prince said. We can simplify the administration, the government administration with that. We might even simplify parts in laws and regulations. So these are actually the 3 advantages which we can derive from the whole blockchain and cryptocurrency area. I think I will stop here. I wanted to say something afterwards on currencies, but
yeah, and I will
stop before you put on your glasses.
Thank you. And I will then come back to you when we have our little interactive discussion and say, well, there's all the upsides, but there may also be some dangers. But we now have the counterpart of the canton of Zug, this great canton which houses many of the energy firms, many financial firms, which houses the crypto valley. Dr. Matthias Michel, who runs the economic department. Now, you know, Zug is very, very big into cryptocurrencies. Where do you see the advantages of blockchain technologies for the economic development of your canton? And where do you see the need for government and regulators to provide the correct framework?
Good morning, everybody. As a teenager, I have seen Swiss watch industry proud of its tradition, but which failed to follow the digital development, the digital technology. So we lost thousands of working places, services, thousands, hundreds of companies. So we won't make this mistake again. And I think Switzerland is back. And as Mrs. Walker mentioned, blockchain as part of the digital revolution affects and drives almost every industry, every product, services, and procedures. So, in my sense, it's a key technology which will have a high potential in every sector, every industry, and therefore we will and shall, as politicians, provide a framework to let grow this technology. And second, I think Switzerland and Zurich and Zug, I mean, we are maybe big in economical impact, but as a space, we are very small. But I think it's very appropriate to drive this technology in Switzerland because we know high standards of living, high standards of formation. We have a knowledge-based technology industry. We have a lot of talents. We will and I hope so, be open to the world to let talents come in to Switzerland. And especially in Zug, we are very small, so we don't have the space for plants, industrial plants, but we have the space for big brains. And I think that's why we are appropriate to attract talents to Switzerland, to grow this industry, which is small in space, but big in impact.
I'm moving back to Switzerland. I see I live in London. I'm moving back to Switzerland, either Zug or Zurich. Now, the next gentleman who is speaking is very much behind the drive of this whole blockchain, crypto valley. He's the CEO of Monetas. He's the founder of Crypto Valley ecosystem, and you are clearly an advocate. You clearly, bought into it. You clearly see the value. Now, the whole concept of this Crypto Valley ecosystem, what does it take? What are the critical success factors for it to succeed? And where else? Are there other places who would have the same, attractiveness? So where is your future competition, in other words?
Is this live? Great. Thank you. So, 6 years ago when we started working in this area, I asked myself, where is a good ecosystem for doing this? Because at that point, Silicon Valley was not really an option. The United States was not very friendly to these new technologies. So I looked at various different possibilities, and I chose Switzerland, and specifically Zug, because it's the most decentralized political system in the world, which is a good fit for decentralized technologies. So we built it up there, and it's been a success story. Within 4 years, Crypto Valley in Zug has become the #1 ecosystem in the world for crypto finance and crypto technologies. And if you look at the market value of the companies that are based in Zug, just in the crypto sphere, it's $100 billion. So $100 billion of value creation within 4 years. So the question then is, how do you do this? And there's 3 things really. You need a clear vision, a good strategy, and passionate evangelism. But that's kind of how you drive this forward, but you then also need the right conditions in the environment. And there again, there's certain things. You need a good, friendly regulatory environment. We had a good start, a base in Switzerland, but there were still a lot of problems in Switzerland that we had to address. So we had to work with the regulators the past 4 years to improve the hurdles that were in the way. And that process never ends, so the work is continuing, but we made enough progress to allow companies to base themselves there. So that's the first thing, a friendly regulatory environment. The second thing is that you need a supportive government. Entrepreneurs are always looking for the best environment, and if the government is not supportive, even if the regulations are reasonably okay, government support has a very powerful signaling effect. And the things that the canton and city of Zug did, and now that the government of Switzerland is doing, have had a very powerful impact to tell the world we are open for business in the crypto finance space. The third element is that you need a good ecosystem of service providers. You need expert people in the area of finance, in legal services, accounting services, and of course many others, but those are the key ones. So we worked very hard over the last 4 years to develop that expertise and competence. And the legal service providers in Zug are now leading the world in this space. So those are the critical success factors. And this can be done in other parts of the world. And of course, there's lots of activity all over the world, in London, in Singapore, in the United States, and a few other places. But Switzerland is leading at this point, and other countries, if they want to participate in this to the full potential, they need to address these critical success factors. And in fact, the past 18 months, I've started working with some other jurisdictions. And one of them we're still under non-disclosure at this point, but they are going to have a legal framework in place within the next 12 months that will be the best in the world, and which will be very good for their local economy. So we need to do this all over the world. It's not enough to do it just in one country.
Brilliant, thank you so much. Now we go over to Kairat Kelimbetov. Your Excellency, you're former central bank governor. You are Mr. Financial System in Kazakhstan. Maybe you do so many things that the best way to introduce you is you are Mr. Financial Systems of Kazakhstan. You know, you've been very, very involved with developing the financial sector in the country, with developing financial regulatory system. Where do you see the pros and cons of especially cryptocurrencies for countries like Kazakhstan? And do you see also other applications, maybe of blockchain? I'm thinking energy trading and so on, for your country.
Thank you very much. I would like also to join to the previous speakers, just to say that it's now it's global competition for who gonna host really the best ecosystem in crypto economy, let's say. And here is, I think the main dilemma is still between two types of regulation approach. So from one side is very friendly approach, which is embracing new technologies, embracing kinds of development, future development of blockchain-enabled technologies. But from the other side is not so friendly approach. And last 12 months, we've been quite surprised with discussions. So one jurisdiction is uploading to the new technologies, the other one is wondering about this. And it's still a lot of questions which have been addressed, especially in terms of what kind of risk and how the regulation authorities should think about this risk, how they should define the legal and regulatory approach. We still have all of these questions globally, I believe. But I think, and I would like to join to the previous speakers, just to say that I think this decentralization ledger technologies is already an unavoidable trend. So we are all going towards it. The question is only how we're going to manage the process. And I also personally more close to the approach of the Canton Zug or to the future upcoming Australian approach, where we have to create a favorable jurisdiction. We are doing the same in Kazakhstan. So here is a small advertising. I am representing Astana International Financial Center, which is also new jurisdiction based on English common law. And we also have one of the key pillars among asset management and capital markets. We would like to develop the fintech. And in order to do it, we also create independent regulation authorities, and within the regulation authorities, the sandbox. So we want to bring the talent pool of people, and you know that from the former Soviet Union territory, we have a lot of talented people in IT and ICT industry and the software. So, and we would like to create great ecosystem to them, and later on also to compete with those authorities which I mentioned before. I think that the most important in this competition is exchange of the international of the approach in regulation. So this is the area where we would like to define right legal and regulatory approach. Thank you.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Now we're going over to Ms. Linda Zeilina, who hails from the think tank community. So she thinks a lot and she thinks deeply. And your think tank Redefine. I mean, especially I've sort of watched some of the clips of your managing director, who is concerned about the ever more fast-moving world of financial transactions, which clearly, you know, this blockchain will not slow down, but rather speed up. So, how do you? What are your concerns? Because I've seen sort of from your think tank, you have concerns regarding the blockchain technology, how it will impact the financial sector, especially how it pertains to social equality, because that's really a big theme for you guys.
Yes, so as a think tank, we not only we dream, we also kind of do evaluate and look at the biggest challenges. And the main thing that we have actually discovered is that what worries us most and keeps us up at night is two things: climate change and social inequality. Two things that kind of can reach points of no return and can have massive repercussions that people seem to kind of overlook because you roll the ball kind of further away and hope for the best. So in a world where you have around 1 billion people with no legal documentation, 7.5 billion approximately apparently completely uninsured, over 2 billion unbanked, there's absolutely huge potential for blockchain and other technologies, especially because of its decentralized nature, because of the fact that, you know, there's less tampering by authorities and so on and so forth. So the potential is there, the opportunities are there, and we do think that it could even help aid. You've seen aid agencies, World Food Programme is using actually blockchain with great effect, very remarkable success by turning down the costs and being more efficient. However, we have been quite worried about certain groupthink happening in the tech and blockchain industry. I guess when you live in that bubble, like in any bubble, there is a fear of missing out, there is major groupthink, and people they become slightly more blind to the dangers and the limitations. So while we do think that there's massive potential, what we're really worried about is, first of all, cultural resistance in certain organizations and governments, the lack of physical infrastructure. If you don't have reliable energy and stuff, in especially emerging economies in sub-Saharan Africa, you have to bear that in mind. So it's not going to be a silver bullet. You need to work together. You need to educate the population so that they know what blockchain is and how much potential for good it has. Plus, as you mentioned, regulation. It's very important to actually talk about the dangers, maybe have policy entrepreneurs who work on regulation, because what happened with banking in 2008, you had no regulation, then huge regulation that kills the market. So you don't want to kill the technology that's very nascent. So it's key to have pilot projects and to kind of keep working on this and keep improving.
Thank you. That was very balanced and very powerful, and especially, you know, we have to bear in mind not everybody has access to electricity, and that's sort of one of the you need. Now, Mr. Mizrahi, you are Mr. Blockchain, Mr. Cryptocurrencies. You report on it, you think about it, you live it, you breathe it, you probably have it for breakfast. Now, with your perspective, and you've been doing that for some time, with your perspective, what is your, and I only give you 3 minutes, I'm so sorry. What is your reaction to what you've heard here?
Well, you can imagine as someone that works in Bitcoin.com that I'm very enthusiastic about the technology and I'm a great believer in its potential. However, I do agree with my previous speaker that there are aspects that we're currently overlooking. And I fear there might be a danger of overhyping at this point, the same way that we saw when the internet just came out and people thought, okay, this will bring a new era of democracy and freedom and will connect the world into one global village. And today, looking back, we can see that not necessarily been the case. And right now, if I'll try to look at what people are saying about cryptocurrencies and blockchain, we see people hoping on the one hand, like in Venezuela and in Russia, when people are saying, okay, this will help us bypass Western sanctions. And here in Zurich, just 3 days ago, Steve Bannon, the former chief strategist for President Trump, said that it will bring basically the end to the enslavement of the Western governments by central banks. So I think there is a danger at this point that people are putting, hold their hopes and dreams on, a specific technology, which is a tool like any other tool, and will take us time as a society to see where it goes. And I don't think we necessarily know now what will be the ramification of it in, let's say, 30 years, when it will be fully implemented in various sectors. Just if I have some time to give, a couple of...
1 minute?
1 minute, okay. So one of the biggest innovations of the blockchain is smart contracts.
Yeah.
So for this term, I don't think that people understand, for example, that if we'll move to a system that's completely based on smart contracts, so we're transferring power from lawyers, for example, in the legal system into the hands of programmers. Okay, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but that's something we need to be aware of, and we need to have codes that match our democratic system. If that's the system we want to go forward, because people do look at it right now as an option to reset the world, and we need to make sure that we're resetting it for something we all support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now what we're going to do is, just to have it a little bit more interactive, maybe I'm going to kick it off with I'm going to ask you 2 questions, and then I'm going to, with a 1-sentence answer to both, and then all of you with 1-sentence answer of reaction, and then we'll have time for 1 question from the floor, and we'll have to wrap up because we need to keep the conference sort of a little bit on time. That's the Swiss in me. I need always to be on time. My question to you is, this has been very interesting. I see the positive, for wealth preservation, but I also see the danger. I see the danger of, avoiding legal systems. The dark web uses cryptocurrencies for avoiding Western sanctions. And with what Avi just said, I see the big danger of, we do have legal systems and there's a reason for them. So how can we, my question to you is, can we ensure that this is based on an equitable line, or can we not?
I believe we can, I think, and we have to. And we have to keep up our legal system. But I put also a big hope into that. I see the danger. I see also the danger in infraction of privacy, etc. I see this danger. But I see also a hope, because we have a problem now with our legal system. We have too many laws. You can't follow the laws anymore and the regulations. You are bound to become illegal. So we have a problem with our legal system, and I have a hope that this system might force us into a better discipline. Maybe I'm too optimistic, but I think this, I hope.
That will take global cooperation. Do you see that global cooperation happening? Because not every country may be interested.
Well, I think sometimes the market dominates it and competition helps it. There is protectionism against that, but I think at the end competition normally prevails. It can be retarded, but it prevails. I'm pretty optimistic in that way.
So now, your reactions, I'm keen your reactions to what His Serene Highness said off in terms of you think it can work, you think you can make sure that you keep it away from the bad guys in Zug?
Yeah. First, any technology can be abused. There's no bad or good technology. So, and we have a lot of laws against for consumer protection. We have financial market laws. So I'm with you telling that the most laws we have, they may be applied to new technologies before thinking about new laws. Secondly, I agree with Your Highness to say that the lawmaker is slow. And if he would be quick laws are not the best laws. So it's too slow for the dynamic of this technology. So we have to, as regulator, we have to invent new ways of soft law, of consensus. And that's why in this task force we lead together with the federal government, we englobe members of the industry, which are members of the international community. And now I'm coming to a question. I think we have it's an international knowledge coming into this lawmaking system in Switzerland, and a lot of people around the world come here to say we want to learn how you regulate. So I think there's a big interaction globally to learn from each other, and especially we have as a regulator, we have to ask the industry how it functions. We have to understand. If we do not understand, we are shaping the wrong laws.
Do you think, I'm coming to you, I'm not breaking it up a little bit here. I'm coming to you. Do you think this is possible? Do you think it's, you know, I hear what is being said, and in an ideal world, it's how it works, but sadly, the world is not ideal. And as I said in my intro, we have the widows and the orphans, and we have the poor countries. What is your view?
Well, yeah, the problem is that I think with a lot of these lawmakers, and especially the organizations that are getting set up, like the EU Blockchain Observatory and so on and so forth, what we have witnessed over the years is that because we live in a very diverse global kind of a world, there still seems to be a lack of representation of different strata of society when it comes to all these technologies. And this is, it's not only a financial technology, some of the aspects of how blockchain can be used is actually social technology. And in some of the ways how it might be applied for ID issuing, for entrepreneurs, for startups and things like that, in a certain way, some of the applications can rewrite the social contract that people have with their country and with their government. So I do think it's very important to involve more voices and have that much more public discussion, because if you ask an average person on the street, what do you think is blockchain? I mean, most people can't even answer how internet works, right? So when it comes to blockchain, people just go completely blank at you. So I do think that actually financial education will be very important.
So a democratization of the
yes, because to
debate.
Avoid also capture, because you know now you have a leading canton of Zug, which is wonderful, and you're like spearheading the revolution in a way, but in a way it's also important to kind of involve others. And
revolutions usually come from the base, right?
Exactly.
What is your reaction to what you've just heard now from the think tank community?
I totally agree with what you said about the importance of focusing on people, and also what Matthias Michel said, that technology is neutral. And this is one of the clearest things that I've learned over the last few years, is that it's very dangerous if we forget that people are at the center of everything. Mm-hmm. It's not about the technology. The technology is just a means to help people have better lives. If we make technology the god, then we run into problems. So technologies are neutral. They can be used for good or bad. It's how we use them, how we develop them, and how we use them and how we regulate them that will determine if the effect is good or bad. So what that means is, as time goes on, the technologies that we develop in the world get more and more powerful, nuclear weapons and so on and so on. And the more powerful they get, the bigger the consequences are if they are used in a bad way. So what we really need to focus on in the world is the values, the cultural values we have. And all the best regulations in the world are useless if the people behind those regulations do not follow them, because they have different values. So we really need to renew the values in the world. Regarding the point of the bad guys, first of all, it's impossible to always to completely eliminate bad guys. So if we try to do that, we enslave the whole population. So we have to keep things in balance. But and I think the solution regarding the crypto technologies is that we realize two things. Firstly, all these digital technologies leave a digital footprint, a digital trail. So if you want to do something criminal, these are not the best technologies to use.
Okay.
In fact, you would use traditional paper money and so on, and other methods. But the privacy technologies that are being built into these new crypto technologies enable us to achieve a balance where you have good privacy if you are a good citizen. But if you do something bad on a big scale, then you can use analysis techniques to trace people through the digital trail.
So hopefully this could also help us in countries where people don't pay their taxes. You know, like we have in many of our emerging economies or third world economies, to get them to pay their taxes. Wouldn't that be the day? Mr. Kelimbetov, you've built up the whole financial system in ecosystem in Kazakhstan. What is your reaction to the good guys, the bad guys, and the cooperation? And you only have a minute, I'm sorry.
I think I would like to talk about the kind of two tiers to approach to the new technologies. So one tier is a traditional, conventional financial sector. And for them, some of them consider it the new technologies like a disruptive factor. Some of them supporting it. And for example, we joined to R3 consortium just to see how we can use the technologies in a traditional, conventional way system. The other one is expecting that it will be anyway a disruptive factor. And here I agree that in certain terms, the digital is more transparent and more supportive in terms of the transparent regulatory regime. But still, for example, the cryptocurrencies considered it's like a huge concerns in terms of the know your clients or anti-money laundering issues. And we should somehow to define the legal regime, which is clarify all the glossarium of the cryptocurrency, clarify the mechanism of ICOs. It should simplify the life of the people, but it's at the same time, even the people who embrace the technologies, they need regulation, and it should be smart regulation.
I think that's very wise. And now we will take one question from the floor. Could you please identify yourself, and could you please say whom you would like to ask the question? Then we'll sum up. We've started about 10 minutes late, and a quarter of an hour more late, and we'll probably only end up about 5 minutes late. So we've made good on time here. Very important CTQ. Can I have one question? Yes, sir. Can you please identify who you are? And your question.
Yeah, I'm Jorge Lepra, I'm managing director of Symbiosis. It's a startup based in Zurich. So my question will be addressed to more the Swiss representatives. No, we are based in Zurich. We are very pleased to be there. We're working with some great partners at all levels. We're a little worried about the slow adaptation of the banking system to the new blockchain era. Being financed by the initial point of view. So I wanted to ask you about what is being done to speed up to adapt the banking system to this new phase.
Well, Mr. Michel, I think the ball is firmly in your court.
Yeah. Yes, I know. Our banks are quite reluctant to the industry, and the more money it's in it by ICOs, the more reluctant they are. And second, the bankers tell me we don't want to have a lot of money today. You know why? So third, I mean, banks come out of a very difficult situation from 2008 and so on. So I understand that they are not at the forefront now. Yeah. Fourth, we invited the banks in our task force. So there's a special task force with all the big banks doing their work now in the next month, how the banks can approach the industry to define with whom, with which technology, which companies and so on they can work. And fifth, of course, they need always to have quite a certain regulation by FINMA, by the Financial Markets Supervisory Authority. So, and FINMA is learning as well. So it's like an iterative way to learn from each other. And I asked our bank, the Cantonal Bank of Zug, how do you do? And I know that they're on the track to learn, but they don't want to take too much risks, especially with a guarantee of the state. Yeah? They don't want to too much risk. But invite them to learn and not to tell, no, we don't want to know anything about this. They have to learn together with the regulator. But I think I pass over to Your Highness because...
actually, no, we're going first here and then His Highness is the last one, sorry.
A lot of companies, they go to Liechtenstein bank to have their bank accounts.
We first go to you, 1 minute, and then we go to His Serene Highness.
I totally agree with the points Matthias Michel made, and I would add one very important point, and that is that kind of like when email was invented, and the post office in many countries, they would say, write the letter at home on a piece of paper, then you come to the post office, we'll scan it, then we'll email it to the next post office, and then we make a printout and the person gets a notification there's a letter for them. I mean, that's crazy, right? That's trying to fit a new technology into an old technology. And that's the problem we have today, and that's what's holding back the banking sector, is that we have anti-money laundering and KYC regulations and processes that were developed in the pre-digital age. And we are trying to force these new crypto technologies and so on into that old-fashioned system. So we still work with passports and driver licenses and so on to ID people and very old-fashioned KYC AML. We need to, I don't have time to go into how to do this. There's very clear ways how to do this, but we need to bring KYC, AML, and all these compliance measures into the modern age, into the year 2018. And there's very good ways to do that. And once we do that, then we can improve the compliance, and then the compliance will actually be a lot better than what we have with the old-fashioned technologies. And that will solve the problem for banks, because the banks are scared that they are not going to be compliant. And because of the heavy financial regulation, they are holding back because they don't want a mistake that they're going to end up with billions of dollars in fines from the government. So the KYC, AML, bring that into the modern age, and that'll help banks too.
Brilliant, and you're going to be the last speaker, and then I'll do a little summing up, but Liechtenstein clearly has a lot to say about this.
Yeah, well, we have actually one bank in Liechtenstein, which is a newer bank, and not a very big one, but it started already quite a number of years ago to get know-how and to specialize themselves with it. And they are now very successful, and they manage also very well sort of this the tension between fiat money and the crypto money. There is also, well, there's the advantage of a small country. So the way between the bank and also the financial service authorities and the collaboration is very good. And our financial service authorities also took specialists on that in already quite early, what I mentioned before, in this sort of regulatory laboratory.
Well, thank you very much, and I want to thank everybody. What I've heard today is, Mr. Michel, there's no such thing as a good or a bad technology, there's just the technology, it is how you apply it. Then we've talked about how blockchain can help in preservation of wealth, how it can help develop whole crypto ecosystems, and that we need to develop those ecosystems, and that they need to work, that it needs to be an interactive, like in your laboratory, an interactive process between the regulators and the people who are running these technologies. then you also, obviously the banks, the current financial institutions need to keep up. And I loved your post office thing. The only people who were really happy about that were the paper and pulp producers, because they really benefited. It's a very tough industry. We've seen that in a place like Kazakhstan, you're working very hard, and it's to get there. So there will be competition, and the people who can come up with the regulatory systems and with the right technology will be the winners. But as you have said, we need to make sure we have a more democratize the approach, we have a more equitable approach, and we take the countries and the people who are on the weaker front into consideration. We have them partake, because otherwise we'll have a two-tier world of the haves with access to the technology and the have-nots who have to sort of live somewhere out there. And we have enough unbanked people in this world. You've given us also a very sort of a good overview. The problem that we have is obviously, how do we make this work on a global scale? Everything starts somewhere, but then the authorities need to cooperate. So on that note, on that upbeat note, I would like to thank everybody from the panel. You've been a fantastic panel. We've learned a lot. Thank you for sharing your insights and your wisdom. Let's give them a hand.